once we are all gathered in Paris, there will be several steps for 1 week of consultations among negotiators, and then 1 week with ministers. And the kickoff, the first day, 30th of November, will take place a summit level meeting chaired by our president, Mr. François Hollande, to which we will welcome a number of world leaders, Sri Narendra Modi, but also the American president, the Chinese president, many others, the German chancellor, and we hope that they will provide the negotiators with the guidelines and impetus that we will need during the 12 days of the conference. It's very important because in Copenhagen, as you probably remember, leaders were invited to come at the end. And when they arrived, there was a very thick document of something like 200 pages or 400 pages. And of course, it was impossible to resolve the conundrum of the negotiation like that. Everybody was expecting the leader to do it in place of the negotiators. That was not reasonable. So we have just looked into the matter and decided that we should just do exactly the opposite, invite the leader at the beginning and ask them to provide the impetus. What is now necessary to ensure the success? First of all, we are not sure that we will succeed. There is some risks that we disagree, and that danger is there. It would be a pity, of course, but more than that, it will give them a very wrong message, because a number of research center companies are already investing in technological solutions. Many individuals are thinking of changing their way of life. Everybody has this in mind. And if the negotiation fails, all this new mindset, which is widespreading across the world, may be to a certain extent in danger. So the conference is important because governments have to commit, but the conference has also a much wider perspective, which is to send a very, very important signal to everybody in the world, each citizen, that yes, this is a new path that the humanity is taking in its own interest. So what kind of agreement should we look for? You are well aware, and probably we are briefed on the basic principles on which a negotiation is based. So these principles are there, and they are not going to be changed. They inspire the negotiation. Many countries come and say we have to respect this principle because they fear that maybe they will be twisted. Frankly, no, I don't think there is any route which can move out from this basic principle, which are very well known. I'm not going to take too much of your time by repeating them. Only one, maybe. It is a core principle that the agreement shall be universal but differentiated. That is obvious. There is no one-size-fits-all agreement possible. We come from different areas of the world. We have different development levels. We have different means. We have different constraints, and we have different climate environment. So this agreement has to be differentiated between those who have historical responsibility and those who not, between those who have the means and those who don't have the means, between those who have important requirements and those who have less. I would add one more thing, which is not enshrined in the principle, but which I think is extremely important. It is an agreement which provide that dynamic I was mentioning. That is, the day after the agreement is concluded, of course there will be ratification, but we must see forward. Because this agreement is going to be implemented during dozens of years to come. In 10 years from now, situation will be different from today, as today it is different from what was there 20 years ago. I will give you only one example. 10 to 20 years ago, we didn't have the same technologies that we have today to cope with the challenges. Research is being done, and most probably in 10 years or in 20 years, new discoveries will be made and additional solution will be there. So it will be necessary for us to adapt our commitments, our ambitions to the existence of new technologies. New problems could also come. If, I don't know, financial crises, wars, all this will have to be taken into account. We cannot have a completely static vision of the COP21. We must have a dynamic vision of the action, climate action in the future. Second key feature, the national contributions. It is, I think, the first time that we have documents like these ones of that importance, of this, the details which are contained therein, where you have so many countries sharing their policies, prospective policies, with everyone in the world. They are national policies, and this is the most important thing. At the end of the day, it will be each country which will decide what it wants to do, what it can do, and what will be its contribution to the common goal. At this stage, something like 150 countries have given their INDCs. I hate these acronyms, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
which
by now we do.
Which represents roughly 90% of the emissions of the world. Which means that we have a pretty good idea of what we have before us, and there already some calculations are being made to evaluate if this will be sufficient to ensure that temperature will not rise beyond 2 degrees. The first assessment is that we are not there yet. Some elements are missing, and that will be, of course, an element for the discussion in Paris. How will we bridge that gap? What can be done today already? What additional commitments, maybe from developed countries, for example? What can be done tomorrow, thanks to the dynamic I was explaining to you? In other words, what is not possible today may be possible tomorrow, thanks again to technology and scientific development. And maybe in the near future, we can bridge that gap. Again, I insist on that. These are nationally determined commitments, not commitments, policies, and this will not be legally binding. It will remain a national policy. I don't see personally that anybody will agree to make these documents legally binding, but they will represent, of course, a very important element for the future, and we shall continue to review these policies to ensure that they are well suited and adapted to the situation. Third element, which is also a very important feature, is the financial package. These commitments were already made during previous conferences. One question which is raised quite often is, are the developed countries ready to fulfill the financial commitments? We have some good indications that good news have already come and will be coming soon. And then I take off my hat as COP chair to mention that France has committed 1 billion euros for the Green Fund, and that we have already given that money, contrary to what is said here and there. Yes, the money has started to flow into the fund. Second, we will have commitments to pour $100 billion in financial aid for such project in the future. OECD has started to look into the matter. The evaluation is quite optimistic and positive. Some people are challenging this assessment, saying that it takes into account elements which should not be there. So it's a very technical debate how to characterize the funds which were committed. But the good thing is that the debate is no more whether the developed countries will pay, but to see whether the figures which are there are absolutely accurate. As you can see, in the negotiating process, it's a big milestone. You are not discussing the intentions anymore. You are looking into what is exactly the kind of money which is there coming. So this, I think, is on the right track. Third thing, which I think is very important for everybody, is to ensure that this treaty, when it is concluded, is not perceived as a pro-environment versus pro-development. You see this kind of debate, which is also quite present in the discussions. I think an agreement has to be fair, as Sunita said. I would say it must reflect the three concerns. It must be a pro-climate agreement, because it is essentially a climate agreement. But it has to be a pro-development, pro-economic development agreement, allowing everybody to grow and to fulfill the aspirations towards prosperity. And it has to be a pro-poor agreement.